Hey everybody, welcome back for another session of Training Them Up. Very practical insights from very imperfect parents. I am Pastor Kyle, this is my wife Marie, and we're really glad to have you back for session 2 of this conversation. This conversation whereby we are sharing with you a bunch of tips and advice that we don't do perfectly, we have not mastered, but things that we're aiming at, some of the biggest lessons that we've learned so far in parenting that we think will help you wherever you are in your parenting journey. Again, you might be a brand new parent or maybe you're just looking for new tools and resources to kind of up your game a little bit. And we hope this is helpful and useful to you. Last time in session 1, I shared with all of you, and we were talking about lesson 1 that really what that came out of, really what that stemmed from was a really, really powerful temptation that we face as parents, which is whenever we're going through something difficult with our kids, they're going through a difficult emotion, they're disobeying or acting in ways that we don't agree with, our immediate temptation is to fix it, to stop it, or to punish it. And so we talked a lot about how the first lesson is instead of rushing to stop it, and certainly instead of rushing to punish them for it, we talked about the power of becoming empathic parents. That's something that we try really, really hard to do. We want to be parents that parent from a place of with them rather than to them or at them. And so we gave you some tips, we gave you some strategies. Hopefully those were helpful to you. Maybe you have some of your own that help you get better at getting on their level and experiencing and feeling what it is that they're feeling. And I want to go back to that temptation here for session number 2 to give you lesson number 2, because again, you go back to those temptations to fix it, to stop it, to punish them for it. I want to pull on the thread of fixing it because that is absolutely something we struggle with. And I think that is going to be really the core, the springboard of the lesson that we have for you here in session 2. So friends, in addition to what we shared in session 1, our desire as parents is not only to be empathic parents, but the other sort of side to that is we want to also be empowering parents. That's the other thing we're trying to be. It's not just empathic parents, but empowering parents. And so lesson number 2 that we have for you here is to not give them the tools, not the quick fixes. That's the little phrase. Give them the tools, not the quick fixes. The other desire we have as parents is we're trying really hard, very imperfectly, to try to give our kids tools when they're going through hardship, when they're suffering, when they're going through something really, really difficult to navigate it, because one day we won't be there with them. One day we won't be there alongside them to help fix it for them or steer them around it. They will have to figure out how to do so on their own. And that gets at kind of like one of our core beliefs as to what parenting is, which is, friends, when we look around at the parents that we respect the most, the ones that we admire the most, the best parents out there are trying to work their way out of a job. The best parents out there are trying to work their way out of a job. They've learned how to not have so much of their ego and self-worth wrapped up in how much their kids need them. And they've learned that actually the most healthy version of parenting is I need to train them up. I need to give them the tools. I need to give them the strategies to face hardship rather than always relying upon me. Now, I think, you and I both, we love to be needed. We love when our kids run to us and they need daddy or they need mommy. Or if you've got teenagers, like there is nothing more cool than when your kid comes to you and says, yo, like I got relationship issues, like I want to talk to you about it. Like that is the coolest moment, right? Like
you're like, oh, let's sit down and have some coffee. Tell me more about it.
Like that's the coolest thing. But it can also, where it becomes unhealthy is if we don't in those moments give our kids the tools and resources to process that event or that circumstance on their own one day, and instead we just use strategies that keep them dependent upon us. And I don't think we do that intentionally. I don't think we do that on purpose. I just think that sometimes it's our natural desire as parents. Again, we hate watching our kids in pain. We hate watching them struggle. So we want to jump in. We want to fix it. We want to make it go away. We don't want this to be a problem for them anymore.
Right.
The problem is it's just not doing them much favors in the long term. And I think one of the things that we believe very, very strongly is, friends, often I think you see this, especially you see this with college kids, is sometimes I think when we look at sending our kids off to college, and sometimes we get nervous because like, oh my gosh, they're going to party and they're going to, get crazy with their friends. Some of that is just exploratory. Some of that is just them trying to find their way. One of our other chief beliefs with that, though, is that sometimes when you go off to college and you see kids partying and stuff all the time, often what that is symptomatic of is it's symptomatic of this is their first taste of the real world. This is their first taste of navigating life and relationships and social situations in a really big, complex way on their own. And because some of them were not given the tools all along to learn how to navigate those and how to sort of handle their own insecurities and fears, they go to things like partying because that's how you numb yourself from those things. Like I just need to, I'm going through this really intense emotion, I'm going through this really intense experience with my new boyfriend or my new girlfriend or this professor or whatever, and I don't necessarily have the tools to do it, so I need to make it go away. And so I'm just going to search out strategies that numb myself from the pain, that numb myself from those really scary things. That is one of the things that we see. That's one of the things that we observed. And that's one of the things that we're trying to, our kids, when we send them off to college one day, will they make their own decisions? Will they do a bunch of things that probably make us like anxious as parents? Yes, for sure. That's part of them just becoming an adult and exploring the world.
Yeah.
But I don't want them to do those things because they're terrified of the world. They're scared of the world. They were never given the tools to address the world, and thus they're now searching out coping strategies to hide from the world. And so again, this lesson, give them tools, not quick fixes, is all about giving your kids confidence. It's all about instilling confidence. It's all about instilling self-esteem. We talk about this a lot, that many of you have seen this before, that psychologists say that every single one of us is this complex blend of both nature and nurture. Every single one of us. So there's a biological, a natural hardwiring that you were born with, that I was born with, that we can't control, that we have no say over. We were just born into the world, and that's part of who our personality is. But the other part of our identity, the other part of who we are, is how we were nurtured. With the homes we were raised in, the leaders we had in our lives, the teachers and the mentors we had in our lives. And did they give us tools to handle the various circumstances that we find ourselves in, right? And so one of the things that we talk about a lot in our home is that kind of like we shared in session 1, that emotions are learned. Like your kids aren't just born into the world and go, I'm feeling sad today, Father. Like they don't know emotions yet. They have to learn them from us. Very, very similarly, we believe that confidence is also something that is learned.
Yeah.
Certainly, you got kids out there that they were born into the world strutting around with all the self-esteem and confidence in the world. But for the rest of us, right, it's like that's the exception, not the rule. For the rest of us, we had to learn. Confidence and self-esteem was something that we gained over time. It was gained through trying and failing, and then trying again, and then failing, and trying again, and getting better and better and better at the thing it is that we've never had to do before, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have that sort of view with our kids, that with our kids, we're trying not to assume or pressure them to be confident when they face situations where they're afraid, but we just are sort of going off the base assumption that they're going to need us to learn how to be confident, to learn how to develop the skills to navigate, again, difficult situations and such on their own. I'll give you one example. This is a big one in our household that we're really, really passionate about, that's really, really important to us, which is we want to teach our kids consent. We want that to be sort of driven into them. We want them to understand that whatever happens to their body is 100% their decision. Mm-hmm. Same thing goes with someone else. So you are only allowed to do to others what they want. And so we shared in session 1, we've got young kids, and so we're starting early with them, trying to teach them that when it comes to consent, they need to verbalize what it is they want and don't want to happen. So again, Our daughter is 5, our son is 3, and sometimes the 3-year-old is a little annoying. And so we're teaching our daughter that when he does something that makes her feel uncomfortable, to say it out loud. So we're trying to give her the tools. You need to say it. That's your job. And then our job is to make sure he listens. So those are that's where we're trying to also meet them where they are, what they can and cannot do, what they can and cannot handle. It's her job to communicate it.
Yeah, say like, I don't like that. Please stop.
Yes, I don't like that. I don't want to play like that.
I don't like that.
Yes. And it's our job to make sure he listens. But I want to be very, very clear here. This is also, I think, especially in our culture and our society today, it is just as important that we teach our little boys as it is we teach our little girls. So this is something I do with Everett all the time, that we're trying to empower him and give him the tools as well. So if he and I are wrestling, which we love to do, he and I, if ever we are playing or wrestling in a way that makes him feel uncomfortable, we teach him and coach him that when he starts screaming or whatever, say, hey, if you tell daddy that you didn't like that or you don't want to play like that. And it's my job to thank him for that, say, thank you, sweetheart, for telling me that, and to stop immediately. And so that's just one example. It's just one example of how we're trying really intentionally to give our kids the tools, not just fix everything for them, which, again, sometimes is so much easier to do. We'll talk about that in a minute. But to give them the tools to address life's problems, life's issues. Just because one day we're not going to be around. We're not going to be able to intervene when they have an issue with a boss or in a relationship. And if we never gave them the ability to practice in a safe environment at home, how are they going to ever feel confident to do so on their own when they leave home, right? And so, again, best parents are working their way out of a job. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to be. So, again, as with the format of this course, the thing that we're going to do now is share with you tips, very practical tips to move this from theoretical to practical, to pragmatic. How do I move this and incorporate this into my everyday exercises and disciplines with my kids? Okay? And so the very first step, so again, this lesson, give them the tools, not quick fixes. The very first sort of practical tip of how you can do this is to assess the current risks. So assess the risk of whatever it is that they're going through, and then act accordingly. So assess the risk and act accordingly. Here's what I mean by that. It feels like for us as parents, maybe you have a different situation, maybe you're very similar. It feels like our go-to reaction as parents is to, when our kids are going through something that they're struggling with, our first reaction is to see it as a life or death situation. Yeah. when most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's not. So, like, how do you know? Assess the risk and act accordingly. So, for example, if your child, so we've got young kiddos, so again, apply this to your own stage, but if your kid is going for a hot stove, it's not an opportunity. That's probably not a moment where teachable moment. That's a quick fix moment. Yeah. Like, that's jump in, stop it from happening, and then teach, right? Yeah. But that's the exception. I feel like most of the time it's not a life or death situation. The risks are very low, and so we need to slow down and allow and empower. Again, back to what I was saying, empower our kids to problem solve in that moment. So, compared to the stove situation. If our kids are fighting with one another, I feel like just the screaming and the ear piercing, like, it makes you think that this is a life or death situation. And so you just wanted to stop. I just want to stop listening to this. I don't want to listen to this. But we're not doing our kids any favors if we break up every single fight, especially if it's not violent. If it's violent, they're smacking each other. Again, different story. The risks there are a little bit higher, so we need to intervene. But if they're just having a verbal shouting match and they're trying to work something out, like, let it play out. That's a little phrase you tell yourself. Like, let it play out. Like, let it play out. Let them try to figure it out between themselves first before you intervene. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Because if you give them the tools to communicate with each other and have conflict resolution, then, I mean, this sounds nice and dandy. Like, 25% of the time I would say 25% of the time our kids kind of figure it out on their own, and the rest we have to intervene just because they're so little. But but hopefully as time goes on, we watch that percentage increase. Because we're giving them the opportunity to practice, because we're giving them the ability to maneuver those conflicts that they have with one another on their own. And so that's the first tip. The first tip is just, again, starting with yourself. whenever something is happening with your kids that makes you feel really, really uncomfortable, assess the risk. If it's very low risk or low to moderate risk, let it play out. Like let them take a shot at kind of work out what they're trying to do, and then intervene if you need to, or on the back end of it. Mm-hmm. So that's the first tip. The second tip we have in order to sort of live into this and make this a practical reality is start small and work your way up. So start small and work your way up. So if it's not an accurate expectation to have of our kids that they're going to immediately, overnight, feel comfortable with something that they're really afraid of. So if you've got a kid who maybe is a little bit shy and it has trouble navigating social situations and interacting with people and talking to other people, they're highly introverted, it's not an accurate expectation to just send them off to school to a brand new classroom and them to come back home and say, well, how many new friends did you make? Oftentimes what they need smaller steps, smaller things to develop mastery over in order to gain confidence to make the bigger step. And so again, play with that example for a little bit, which is the case with one of our kids. One of our kiddos is highly introverted and so would not necessarily walk into a social situation and be like, hey, everybody, I'm so glad to be here.
I'm the same way.
Right.
I'm very introverted.
Right. And that's not a right expectation. And so for us, she will need to learn how to navigate social situations. It's fine to be introverted, but at some point she's going to have to learn how to navigate social situations. And so can we start small? Can we start with people that she knows? Can we start with people who are familiar to her? Can we start with her approaching one kid at the playground instead of 17 in a classroom and trying to make friends? Mm-hmm. And so that's something that we try to build into as well. Can we break it down? Can we break it down into bite-sized chunks with our kids? If there's a skill that we know they need to learn, if there's a skill, and it really depends on the kid, because one kid will be really, really, again, nature versus nurture, naturally will be a lot more farther along in this skill, and he or she will need guidance and they'll need empowerment in something else. And the same goes for, the next kid down the line, sort of thing. Yeah. So start small and help them gain some confidence over that. I often think of the very first time that I took Marie snow skiing. We had to start very small, and we had to sort of go step by step before she could go down a hill all by herself.
I never did.
Which is a story for another day. So start small, work your way up. The third tip that we'll give to you as it relates to sort of being empowering parents that are giving your kids tools, quick fixes, is encourage them to try new things with you. Encourage them to try new things with you. This is something that we've noticed, is that sometimes our kids will want to do something, they'll want to try something, but it's natural human tendency. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of what we don't know. And so oftentimes one of the greatest gifts we can give as parents is simply, we talked about this a lot last time, walking with them. And so if they want to try something new and they're terrified about it, so say it's athletics, it's trying a sport, or it's getting involved in a club at school, is there a way that they can make those first steps with you or with somebody so they're not doing it alone? Yeah. And so we talk about that a lot with our kids, that we want to encourage them to try new things, and we want them to not feel like they have to do so alone, but they have a support system with them. Mm-hmm. So give them, encourage them to try new things and do it with them. Couple more. So 2 more. One other tip that we have been trying to sort of incorporate as a part of our regular practice to become more empowering is we also try to give our kids a role on the team. So we're trying really hard to cultivate, and again, sometimes we don't do this perfectly, but we're trying as parents to develop a system in our family whereby we are a team. We're not we're not the sort of authoritarians dictating everything all the time. We're also not the servants who do everything for you. Yeah. But we're a team. And so if we're taking on something, we're tackling something as a family, we want them to have a role in that task. So do you have examples, like, can you think off the top of your head of ways in which we've done that with our kiddos or things we've tried?
Well, the other day, anytime they ask me if they can help me do something, I pretty much always say yes, because I want them to know that I feel confident that they can do it. And anyway, like the other day, Ren likes to hang her clothes now on the hanger, and she's really good at it, and she does great. Sometimes she does it backwards, But like the other day she was doing it and I was like, oh, this is on backwards. But it's fine. Like I still hung it up just because I didn't want her, I just wanted her to feel confident in her ability to help, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to change what she did in front of her, and I didn't change it anyway, but
yeah,
if that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. We
Yeah.
talk about that a lot, that we are perfectionists by nature, but if you do that, like if you go, so give them a role in the team. So say it's, say it's laundry, or say it's whenever it's dinner time, hey kiddos, your role is to set out the silverware or the plates or set the table, whatever. Give them a role and don't correct them. Don't correct them if they do it differently than how you would have done it.
Yeah.
Or let's say it's time to put away the dishes in the dishwasher. If they put something in the wrong place or whatever, they do it in their own way. Don't change it simply because it didn't meet your personal preferences.
Right.
And again, we tried to say this last time. It's often like a lot of this wisdom is just steeped in how we ourselves don't like to be treated. I mean, if you're listening to this, and you you're a working parent, you know how incredibly annoying and frustrating it is to be micromanaged at your job.
Yeah.
And the reason for which is because when people micromanage you, the sort of implicit message is, oh, I don't trust you.
Yeah.
I don't trust that you can do this. I don't trust that you have what it takes to complete this task.
Yeah. Or you're not going to do it right. Like, you didn't do this right.
Right.
So I have to fix it.
Yes. And so...
And we don't like that. So
right, we don't like that.
Our little people aren't going to like that.
Right, and it diminishes our confidence as people.
Yeah.
And so this is one of those things that I'm trying to help you to get to see that, friends, so often, who our children become is based off of how we treat these seemingly insignificant, mundane, ordinary moments. How we treat them, how we go about them. Do we routinely use them as small, empowering moments? Or over the course of time, have we just simply taken away every opportunity they had to learn, to try, to get good at something, some skill that they're going to need one day?
Yeah.
So that leads to the final one. Final tip we have for you, and this is by far the biggest growing edge that we currently have as parents. This is something that we are not good at, just to be fully honest, which is be very, very careful. Be very, very careful.
You're
about
saying it.
the word. Oh no, I'm saying the very thing. Okay, this is what she means. Be careful not to use words or phrases that seem to communicate a lack of confidence in your kids. That's the tip. Be intentional, be mindful about not using phrases or words that communicate a lack of confidence in your kids. So what she was just referring to is one of the phrases that we're trying to remove from our vocabulary is be careful, be careful. That is our favorite thing to say whenever they're doing something that's slightly risky or they're trying something new. It's, oh, be careful. And Sure. Are we supposed to be there for our kids and make sure they don't do things that are destructive or harmful to themselves?
Yeah.
Yes. But
it's the risk thing again. Think of the risk.
Sometimes it's a really low risk thing or a low to moderate risk thing, or it's something that is objectively not that risky or not that dangerous, but for you wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. And so your first impulse is be careful. And I'll just never forget, as a kid, I also, there was a part of me that hated hearing that. I hated hearing it not because I didn't want my parents to care for me or love me. That was always reassuring and comforting. But it was because sometimes the subtle message is what our kids can hear when we say, be careful, is, I don't trust you. I don't have confidence in you. I don't think you can do that. And that's
not a good idea.
And it's, again, that's not intentional. None of us are meaning to communicate that. But that is what our kids could be hearing when we say those words. And so, what is our... substitute? So instead of saying be careful,
what's your plan?
What's your
plan?
Right.
What's your plan, buddy? With that red marker in the living room. What's your plan?
Next to that white chair.
Yeah.
What is your plan? Please think about it. What can we use those opportunities to, like we said last time, get curious, ask questions. What's your plan? Or hey, have you ever thought about this potential scenario? Or sometimes we've said this, hey, so just know this, but at the end of the day, I trust you.
Yes.
And especially if you're parenting teenagers, I think that's what you can do with your kids. So part of, you can be like, well, Kyle, if I know, if I have a little bit more wisdom and I know the danger, I need to communicate that to my kids. Absolutely. But can you do so in an empowering way? Can you communicate that concern and then end with, but I trust you. I trust you. This is possible. I know you're really interested in this. I know you want to go about this. I want to share this with you, this concern I have, just this reality. But at the end of the day, I trust you. And I'm going to trust you. Trust as a verb. I'm going to trust you right now in this moment. And good gracious, that is terrifying. I love the analogy when someone says that parenting is like having your heart walk around outside your body. You ever heard that phrase before?
It really is.
But again, that's back to what I said at the very beginning of this session. The best parents, as difficult, as challenging, as scary as it might be, are trying to work their way out of a job, because the reality is this: you are going to be out of a job at some point. Your kids are going to leave the house. They're going to get married. They're going to, have kids themselves. They're going to take on big boy and big girl jobs. And the only thing we will have control over is, did we give them the tools to navigate all those situations effectively and in a healthy way? So that's lesson number 2. And as if you're sitting there and you're like, Kyle, these are great, these are awesome, but like, that's just terrifying. Like, I don't know how to get to that place when I've got so much anxiety and fear about what that's going to require. If that's what you're feeling, then I really want to encourage you to come back for session 3, because as promised, both last session and this one, that is going to be what we talk about in the final conversation. So as we close, go ahead and head over to the application guide. Again, we've got some tools and some resources there for you, and some discussion questions that you can sit with and wrestle with and talk about with your partner. And we'll look forward to seeing you back for the final session.